hotter the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A fiercest serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
Bing boom. Boom. We're back.
Back, baby.
We're back. Have you ever seen
We're
that
so
movie?
back. Oh, we're back?
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Dude, that movie crushes.
Borderline terrifying sometimes.
Yeah, but it's really good.
Yeah,
Like, it makes you want to go golfing with dinosaurs.
it does. Isn't there like a circus in that movie or something?
I don't know. It's been so long since I've seen it, I honestly couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
But you know what I am looking forward to?
What?
Your opening bit.
Woo! I don't really have a bit.
Okay.
I usually do.
For those of you who are new to Battle Buddies, if you go back and listen to our other stuff, you can just hear in Kevin's voice, he's like, all right.
Time to do it.
Time to do the bit that I've been practicing in my head for the entire day. But no bits today. We're going to get straight to it.
Yeah,
We're going to front load this.
we are. We're going to front load the shit out of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Battle Buddies. We are covering Masters of the Air.
Mhm.
It's going to be a show on Apple TV Plus, but for those of you who don't know, sometimes shows are based off of books. And not just any books, big books. And
Big
so
hunking tomes.
tomes, that's a very Dan Carlin thing to say. And Kevin and I have decided to divide and conquer.
Yep.
And so here we are at the beginning of the Masters of the Air story.
Yep. We're
Yeah.
here.
So hopefully you're listening to this before you watch the show and you'd be like, that's not real. I listen to Battle Buddies. That's not realistic at all.
Yeah, let's just jump on in. We
Fucking get
got
it.
fucking so much to talk about.
Fucking get it.
Okay.
Let's go. Welcome, everybody.
So, this is a series about the 8th Air Force during World War II. It is largely sourced from the absolute tome of a book called Masters of the Air by Donald L. Miller. I've done a little bit of research into the dude. He writes a lot about World War II
Oh, really?
aircrafts. Yeah,
I didn't know
he's got that thing going for him, that he likes airplanes in World War II, it seems like.
I can't blame the guy.
No, they're interesting as
Yeah.
fuck. But I don't know if I'm into them as much as other people are currently. We'll get to that. Other sources we may or may not reference, but we definitely are looking at and using is largely actually primary sources. The reason why I really like Miller as an author is he tells you what to research, like what the primary source is, so then you can just Google it and look it up yourself because a lot of it's public domain stuff, or like you can access it from the Air Force website. So I've been looking at like a lot of the memos he references. We're starting to look at some of the films that he references,
Yeah.
and we want to like play some clips, especially for our Patreon and stuff, like get that shit going. It's
Dude,
super interesting.
The characters, the real people in this story are fucking stars.
They're crazy.
Yeah, they're like famous. It's like everybody knows the 8th Air Force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This series is for you if you like listening to us undulate between levity and sincerity, want to be more prepared on the source material before starting Masters of the Air coming in Apple TV, I think January 26th,
I believe that's correct.
or just want to learn more about staggering moments in human history. This series is not for you if your criticism is, and I'm quoting a very small portion of a single comment here from the dynamic Masters of the Air subreddit, the most recent promo clip showing the Normandy mission, those should also be P-51Bs and Cs as well, or at the very least mixed groups of Bs, Cs, and Ds. No 8th or 9th Air Force fighter group at the time had full D model squadrons. Most fighter groups didn't transition fully to all D models until late July, early August of 1944. Listen, username DB Fly Guy might be right, but fuck if I know.
Is that really?
Yeah, that's his name. I love you, DB Fly Guy.
Yeah, dude, shout out to that guy.
I read all your shit.
Yeah, we're not hating. Your name is in our mouths.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what we mean by this is that we are not that level of into.
No.
And I feel like we needed to say that
Yes.
before starting it because we do really like World War II. We've covered it before. We had a really, really good time covering
We did.
Letty Gulf.
Mhm.
And I like these airplanes. I like the 8th Air Force. It's super fucking interesting, especially with like the big name egos that go involved with all this stuff and like all the propaganda that gets thrown into the Air Force. but I don't know the difference between a P-51B and a P-51C. Like, I just don't know the difference between those two. And I probably won't. Maybe I will by the end of the series. Maybe I'll just like finally, fuck it, I'm going to learn all the differences.
It's just like semantic masturbation to me.
It
with that
could be,
stuff.
yeah.
Like, oh, it's just, I don't know. I just don't have that type of fixation with it.
We're not there yet.
We're story-driven people.
Yeah. Who knows? We may get there.
We might.
If there's a reason for it, then I'll probably learn it.
Fair enough.
The point I'm hopefully making clear is that Spencer and I are not experts in this field, and we are not trying to be. In our age of misinformation, maybe it is not a bad thing to say this often and without shame. I feel like that's something that I've been thinking about with Battle Buddies and like content in general with the internet content and podcasting content is I'm not trying to be an expert. That's not my goal here because I'm not an expert. I'm just someone who likes these stories and trying to share interesting parts of it. I know a lot of people don't like reading 1,000-page historical documents on airplanes. So I don't mind. I actually like that. And so that's kind of where we're at. That's like where we fit into this bubble.
Yeah, we asked our friend who was in the Air Force, and this man is the most disciplined man we know.
He's absolutely.
And we were like, hey, man, do you want to read this book with us and be on our podcast? And he was like, how long is it? And we said how long it was, and he was like, I'm good. But that's the point of us.
Yes.
You guys don't have to read it.
You don't have to read it.
Just listen to us make jokes.
Yeah. And, I mean, from a lot of content that I consume, like I'll start with a podcast on a story and then realize that I like the story and then go read the book. Like, go read the book. There's so much shit I'm leaving out of just these first like couple chapters.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. It took me weeks to do chapter 4.
Yes.
But that being said, it's a tremendous book.
It is. He did a
Very
great
well
job.
written.
It's hard. So one thing we could probably say up top when we go into the book is his writing style is confusing at first because he doesn't go in a timeline.
He pops all over the place.
He pops all over the place. It makes sense eventually. Like once you get enough of this shit under your belt, you're like, I get it now.
Yeah.
And so I wish I would have actually had like a better introduction to the book. But the book's great once you get going.
Mm-hmm.
Once Clark Gable gets there, whew.
Clark Gable.
Okay, so this book is very large and it jumps around a lot. I think to better acquaint those of us unfamiliar with the 8th and or World War II bombing missions, we should start by building a timeline of important characters that all influenced one another until the bombs started to be dropped. Or maybe we'll think of this as a family tree, where each descendant builds on the thoughts of his predecessors.
It's really beautifully said.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Oh, okay. We got our first guy. So first up is the Air Marshal Hugh Trenchard.
Trenchard.
Look at that guy.
Is that really him?
Oh, yeah.
What a stud.
Dude, the dude's legit. So he is, I'm just going to give you these like little brief synopsis of these guys. I'm going to be oversimplifying like all of this. There's so much history here, but for our purposes, we don't need all that. So he's considered like the Royal Air Force's founding father and first commander. He assumed command of the Royal Flying Corps in 1915. They changed to the Royal Air Force with him in charge in 1918. At this time specifically, he developed the culture of constant attacks from the air. This is this guy's legacy for the Americans.
What a cool culture.
Dude, it's wild. Well, because I think one thing to remember is World War II, American Air Force didn't exist before
No.
World War II,
Yep.
8th Air Force, essentially. As far as like functionally.
We'll get into that.
Yeah. But it's just like it's not there. So it's nice to know where that comes from so you know why they start out the way they start out and like why they do what they do.
Right. So, listeners, the Air Force does not exist yet.
No.
This is the Army that has Air Forces.
Yes.
Right? Is that a
Yeah.
good way to... Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before World War II.
Yes.
Before 1938, I think.
Something like
Something
that.
like, who the fuck cares? I'm just kidding. I care.
Great history podcast,
Yeah.
guys.
All right, so that was that, guys. Trenchard is all about just like constant attacks. That's what you want to do. Then we move along the timeline a little bit. We get this Italian guy in the 20s. His book is released in 1921, but I don't think our guys read it till like 1922, 1923. But we have our Italian boy, General Giulio Douhet,
Douhet.
the Italian air commander. What he's going to be important for is he wrote this book called The Command of the Air, which was first published as a book in 1921. I want to include Douhet to introduce a topic that Spencer and I will come back to for the entire series. bombing the ever-loving shit out of civilians and military targets.
I'm going to argue too much.
It is a hard pill to swallow when you are taking in all of this content, is that they have no problem bombing civilians.
Yeah.
And we'll get there. But
yeah,
it matters that we talk about it first.
100%. That's good. That is a massive point of this story. And I'm really curious to see how good old Apple TV portrays this.
So that's kind of what I'm trying to get gearing up for. Because we don't know how they're going to portray it, but we kind of know how they might portray it.
No, but we do know that there should be P-52. I don't know.
All right, so when you attack civilians and military stuff, this is what we call total war. From Britannica, total war means military conflict in which the contenders are willing to make any sacrifice in lives and other resources to obtain a complete victory. Basically, this is everything after, like, actually kind of like the War of 1812, right? War of 1812, they're still kind of lining up and just like attacking military targets, but after Napoleon and after Clausewitz, that kind of all goes away. Like, Clausewitz is a big, like, believer of, hey, it's all fair game at this point. Like, the most rational thing you can do is just destroy them as quickly as you can.
Survive!
Yeah. So Trenchard's aggressive attack beliefs with Duhet's total war theory meant that those who came after would have no real problem bombing anything and everything if it meant winning. And I'm not putting a value judgment on this completely because it is complicated. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it.
If for those of you who have not dived into like World War II, you know, the United States, from my understanding, was trying to stay out of it as long as possible.
Absolutely.
So by the time that the United States, and the bombing of civilians was happening before the United States got involved, but by the time that the United States got involved, we were like, okay, if you want us, like, we're going to be dropping shit.
I would say that these guys knew there was going to be a war and they were going to be bombing civilians, the guys that are coming next.
Okay.
Well before it happened because, yeah, we'll get to all that.
Okay.
The point to remember here is that both of these ideas are core values of the Air Force before there was even an Air Force. Some modern things I have read attempt to smooth over these bombing decisions later, and we would like to explicitly push against that narrative. So again, not necessarily the judgment value of it, if it's good or bad, but no, this was their plan from the get-go, and smoothing it over and pretending like they didn't want to do it is not accurate at all. This was their strategy.
Absolutely, and we're going to get into it next episode with the chapters that I cover. But the media straight up lied about it. Yeah. And so, of course, the president turns on the news and he's like, oh, well, we got a lot of Germans today. Yep. And it's like they lied about the amount of Germans military that they were killing. And they lied about the amount of... They didn't even talk about the civilians that we were killing. So it was a very romantic war in Europe on the TV. Yeah. And that is just not the fucking case. It was even classified how many civilians we were killing.
Yep.
So...
Yeah, the propaganda machine was big. Okay, so we go from those guys, these European gentlemen, and then we're going to go along to Mitchell. So Trenchard's and Duhet's ideas were incredibly influential to an American named William Billy Mitchell. And we aren't going to give Billy Mitchell the time that he should have because we could do a whole episode on him because we will one day. Wild. He's a wild human. We should probably study him like we study Halsey kind of stuff.
We will one day.
Yeah, we will. And what we should know about him right now is he definitely sought to push bombing and the Air Force as like the military power to be had. Like he read the Duhet's book and was just like, shit, this is the future. Like it is absolutely the future, and pushed against everybody that said no and absolutely ruined his career doing it. Like he got court-martialed because he wrote this long thing saying that Pearl Harbor was going to get bombed years before it got bombed, and MacArthur sat on his court-martial hearing, and it was a whole fucking thing.
You're glossing over that like that's no big deal. Like
just
MacArthur was at his court-martial.
MacArthur called it like one of the great embarrassing moments of like his career or something like that.
We got to cover that. We'll cover it someday.
It's crazy. He didn't foresee everything. Like he wasn't like a total savant genius. in terms of predicting the bombing. Like, he thought that carriers weren't going to be a thing. But we've talked about that in Letty Gulf, that nobody really knew besides Japan that carriers were going to be the thing. He thought they were going to have to take over an island, get an airstrip, and then bomb. But he did foresee this coming. So anyway, Mitchell, he is like, in my mind, he is the founding father. He is the George Washington of the Air Force.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. That's a cool way to put it. Okay.
Yes.
I didn't make that connection, but I think that's good.
And yeah, I think that because everybody that comes after is essentially going to be bomber mafia from Mitchell or just some guy who they fight against. Okay. So like he is like he's kind of like Rickover in like the Navy, you know,
okay. Like a Godfather
type.
Like
love him or hate him, but like he is a warping factor of this this industry.
Shout out to Rickover.
All right, so who comes after? But the guys that are following in Mitchell's footsteps that didn't ruin their career is the American General Hap Arnold. Hap Arnold, West Point graduate, one of the first 4 licensed pilots, and was taught by the goddamn Wright brothers.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Name drop.
The Wright brothers taught him how to fly airplanes. That's a crazy sentence that you read.
Yeah, way to name drop. Fucking. Who taught you how to fly? Some fucking dorky brothers named the Wright brothers. Fucking. Do we know their names?
You probably should.
Yeah.
Don't. They're brothers. Arnold was put in charge of the Air Force in 1938, so I think that's when it becomes its own thing. It still probably is connected to the Army. I don't know.
It is. It's a subsidiary of the Army still.
God, the military is so confusing for no reason.
Isn't it called the Army Air Corps at this time? Or is it legit the Air Force?
Well, because it's like the 8th Air Force.
Right, but that's a subsidiary of the Army.
That probably makes sense.
Yeah.
The military, man. You guys in your bureaucracy, like, I thought teachers had it bad, and like, you guys are on a whole other level.
I mean, it's the same. Here's a really good way to put this for current times. Space Force is a part of the Air Force.
Right.
But it's their own branch. And like the Marine Corps is a part of the Navy.
Yes.
But it's their own branch.
But it's their own thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, what's important right now about Hap Arnold is, so Hap Arnold comes after Mitchell. Mitchell's the godfather, but he dies essentially before it could be realized. Both physically, like he dies in 1936, but also he ruined his career before that. But Hap Arnold, who's like his protege, who's one of the guys that are trying to follow in his footsteps, like, you know, push forth, like air power is the real power. Hap Arnold has 2 guys under him. One is Spatz and one is Eaker.
Ira.
And those are the guys that we got to also talk about.
Yep. You're going to be hearing a lot of these names, so take notes.
Yep. All right, so the first one.
That's a dope picture.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so in May 1942, General Carl Toohey Spatz took command of American air operations in Europe. Let's reference a couple timeline things so that this makes sense. The Battle of Britain was 1940, right? July, October 1940. Dunkirk was 1940. Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941. Mm-hmm. So he's coming right after that. Arnold's going to put him in charge of essentially this 8th Air Force from America.
It becomes interesting to see sort of how Pearl Harbor made a lot of men join the military.
Dude, so many of these bombers.
It's very much like 9/11.
They're almost all volunteers
yes.
from fucking after Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
I probably would have signed up. I didn't realize.
People were pissed.
You forget it was thousands of people that died. Like,
yes.
It was like 6,000 or something like that. It's a wild number.
Wouldn't it be weird, though, to join after Pearl Harbor and be like, all right, let's go get Japan. They're like, you're going to Germany. Like, oh, didn't see that coming.
At 18, I would have been confused, but now I'm like, that makes sense because I don't understand anything about the military. All right. So the next guy is Ira Eaker. He was essentially the second in command of the 8th Air Force under Spatz, I think. I think that's how it works out. He worked in England to establish the 8th's base of operations. Mm-hmm. So basically, it's Arnold. Arnold has 2 guys working for him, and we have Spatz and Eaker. Spatz is working kind of hand in hand with Arnold, and then Eaker's actually in England trying to set up everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's correct.
Arnold and his men of fanaticals that used Mitchell's ideas to move Air Force forward were called the Bomber Mafia.
Yeah.
I am, as I said before, oversimplifying a lot of things. I am leaving out people that even a quick Wikipedia search would tell you were involved.
Yeah.
For the purposes of our storytelling, knowing a little about Mitchell, Arnold, and Eaker and Spatz dynamic will help us endlessly.
Well said, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you a teacher?
So we got Mitchell, then he goes to Arnold, and then Arnold goes to Eaker and Spatz.
Beautiful.
Cool. Makes sense now.
I get it.
All right. Let's get into the creation of the 8th and how that all works.
Shout out to the 8th. Holy shit.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
All right, so we're in like 1942-ish time period, right? 1942, we are in the war, so now we are trying to establish bases in England.
Mm-hmm.
Arnold made the 8th, then put Spatz in charge of it. He sent Eaker to England to actually get it moving at the start of 1942. By the end of 1943, there would be 185,000 men and 4,000 planes.
185,000
yes.
men.
That's wild. That's a lot of dudes.
That's a shit ton of people.
Yeah. For reference, in 1942, when he gets over there, there's 0. There's 0 men and there's 0 planes.
Okay, that's good perspective.
Yeah, because he's one of the first guys over. Eaker's trip alone could be a movie. Do you remember his trip? It's early in the book. His trip is fucking wild. Some quick highlights. He had to avoid Nazis by wearing civilian clothes and walking past them. He had to memorize all of the directions to get from America to England to the spot he needed to get, because if he got captured with the directions, they would have figured out that he was an American military guy.
Yeah.
So he had to just memorize them all. When he was on his final plane flight, the Dutch pilot pulls him up and he's like, "I don't want to scare you, but there is a Nazi following us. There's some Luftwaffe behind us, and they might shoot us down." And he's like, "Shit, we may not even get started."
Yeah.
And I don't know what the world would look like today if Eaker didn't even get to England.
Dude, the amount of shit that the 8th Air Force goes through
Yes!
to win this war is wild.
And I don't know who else could have just done it for them.
Nobody, man.
Armstrong maybe, but
Nobody could.
because Spatz can't leave because he's organizing a shit ton of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Arnold can't leave because he's dealing with all of the politics all the time. And he's dealing with all the industry and trying to get these planes built and researching new planes.
Right.
So they can't leave. And they can only send what's-his-face because he's the one they trust. He's the protege. It's crazy.
In the future.
He did make it, however. And Eaker established the headquarters at an old all-girls school. I put this part in just because it's kind of funny. When talking about their new headquarters, because it's an all-girls school, right?
Uh-huh.
And that night, there's just a bunch of bells ringing. They're like, "Oh, what the fuck's going on?" And that night, the duty officer heard bells begin suddenly ringing all over the manor house. Some checking revealed that beside each bed was a bell that labeled, "If you need a mistress in the night, ring twice."
Are you serious?
Because it's an all-girls school. I love that part.
Twice.
Twice, ring it
Ding,
twice.
ding. Come get some. That's funny.
All right, Spencer and I are probably at our weakest when trying to track all the airfields the planes flew in and out of.
Mm-hmm.
This is because there were a lot of them in Europe. It's complicated.
Yes, Europe is complicated, folks.
Oh, man, I had to show a map of World War I Europe to my kids. I was like, and here's this bullshit. Just a bunch of shit happens.
Here's this bullshit.
For example, I counted 40 in England by 1944, made of 3 different divisions, and it's kind of hard to tell here, but they're all the fuck all over the place. They're not even all grouped in ways that make sense here. They're just everywhere.
All over the goddamn place.
Which makes sense a little bit once you read through the book where, they were just getting airfields where they could, and they're just trying to get ready for whichever new operation they're going. They're just doing it.
It makes sense.
Yeah, on the fly.
I get it.
Yeah.
But considering the majority of Europe right now is being swept by fucking Germany.
Yep.
They're like, we got to use this island as a fucking stronghold.
And they're trying to save England while fighting against Churchill, essentially.
Yeah, dude. Britain, learning about Britain during World War II makes you not hate Britain as much. I retract my statement from our other episode where I said it's hard for me to think that English people are cool. They're cool.
They're cool, damn it.
Very, very fucking cool. Shout out to the English.
Shout out to the English.
For this episode. You'll come back later and I'll be pissed.
All right. In fact, let's take a moment and talk about organization. I think that what we can do, since we can't nail it every time about like which airfield all these missions take place in and where that is in relation to England and the other places, that's too hard probably. But we can make sure that we understand like the basics of how these missions work.
Yeah.
This is from Miller. The 8th Bomber Command was organized into combat wings. Each wing was comprised of 3 bomber groups which met in the skies over their neighboring bases and flew into battle together. Each combat wing in turn belonged to one another's larger organization called initially a bombardment wing and later an air division. So basically what you need to know is that there are 3 divisions in England, at least by the end of the war. And what would happen is, like, let's say there's like 12 bases for 2nd Division. 2nd Division's the ones in blue. That's the big blue circle I have up there. And what'll happen is like 3 airfields will send out a bunch of bombers. So then those become your bomb groups. Okay? Those bomb groups then, during the mission, meet up, and that becomes your combat wing. And that's kind of really important when you're following the stories. I'm sure it's going to be not explained really well in the show.
No.
But it will be important when you're like trying to understand like why a couple characters are always in the missions together.
1,000%.
Because it just matters, right? Like if you are in this one division and there's only a couple airfields that are running that month, it's all on you guys to do all the missions when they say they need a combat wing going. So that's that. I think that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Okay. To recap, Arnold and Spatz sent Eaker to England in 1942. Eaker began organizing men and planes to launch attacks from England. So they're going to attack from England to France and hopefully also to Germany. So now we're getting into the first test. Now that Eaker had established a base and was getting men and planes, surely he would have time to train them before Spatz and Arnold made him start executing missions. Right? Right? This was not to be. Arnold got wind of the upcoming Operation Torch, which was the invasion of North Africa.
Yeah.
And here's a quote from Miller. Arnold saw Operation Torch as a threat to the very existence of the 8th Air Force Base. Before it was completed, the depleted 8th might be absorbed into the Royal Air Force's night campaign. This is the reason Arnold pressured Spatz and Eaker to get their crews into combat before they were properly trained. So to establish context for everybody here, there is like so much propaganda and political maneuvering during the whole war, which like we don't always hear about. And in Band of Brothers, you don't get it because you're following the Band of Brothers. Like you get a little bit, but not like what's going on in this Air Force shit. Like Churchill is actively trying to absorb these planes that are being sent over. And Arnold knows that if he gets absorbed, he's never going to have the Air Force become a thing. So he is doing everything he can, including sending men to their death before they're ready, to prove that this will work. Which is kind of a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
But I also don't think I could make that decision either way. Because I get what he truly, one thing that I'm not giving Mitchell and Arnold and Spatz and Eaker credit for is they all do believe in the Air Force. Like they believe in air power.
Oh, yes.
They like 100% believe it's the morally correct thing to do. And they believe that by doing it, they will secure America's defense.
Yeah. So let's think here. You and I have talked about this, right? As far as being humane and the right thing to do, you know, post some of these people are veterans of World War I.
Absolutely.
Right. And World War I
almost all leaders in World War II, and this is something that didn't occur to me until I finished Blueprint to Armageddon from Dan Carlin. Almost all the World War II leaders fought in World War I.
So those motherfuckers saw how fucked up chemical warfare is, trench warfare, close hand-to-hand combat. It's fucked up.
Yeah.
So in their minds, there was this level of, you know, removed they were so far removed from the actual violence because they're high. We'll come to learn that it's fucked up in the sky too.
Yes.
But
they were wrong about a lot of it.
100%.
They thought it would end it quickly.
Yes,
and it didn't.
they in their minds were like, you know what, this is way more humane because we're just dropping things from afar. We're not seeing the people. This is like a way cleaner way of doing things.
We'll destroy morale.
And it's just so completely not, dude. As we'll get into it.
Yeah.
But holy shit.
So pressures were high. As we are told, Churchill would use bad bombing and or lost planes as leverage against Roosevelt to absorb the 8th. So this is what we call like positional authority, which is like my favorite type of like non-corporeal thing, right? Like where you are and what's going on gives you authority, not your actual like rank and status. This happens all the time like in the classroom and stuff, right? Like you give a kid a job, him getting that job now will give him positional authority to like execute more rights than he should. Mm-hmm. Or like a campus monitor, right? Like cross guards can have like ungodly amount of authority for no fucking reason other than that they're the cross guards.
Oh
like,
man, dude, you should see our campus monitors, bro. they run a tight ship.
It's a thing, like positional authority. So Churchill's like, all right, if they fuck up, I'm already in England and I have my own thing going on. He can't really say no to me if I have any leverage to get a wedge in. And
it's like what they in the military call billets.
Okay.
A billet is like a job where your rank doesn't matter because you have that job.
Ooh,
so
interesting.
For instance, yes. So for instance, when I was getting phased out of the military, I was an E3 Lance Corporal. That's low rank. And I was in charge of rosters. Like I was in charge of like going to the shooting range and making sure certain people's names were on rosters. So fucking officers and all the people were coming up to me to make sure their name was on a roster. And it's like, cool. So positional authority.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I have this fucking power, even though I'm a fucking Lance Corporal. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So Frank Armstrong, the inspiration for the main character in 12 O'Clock High, was going to lead this daylight raid. He had to ride co-pilot because of a technicality. He wasn't like flight checked or whatever you call it. So he was an officer. He was like a general. He's right there with Eaker. He's like the organizational guy. Like he's fixing all the problems of like bad planes and like getting men trained up. Like he's doing all that. And so these guys are also like, when I'm saying that they follow Mitchell and like they actually believe this, like they do. They go out on the missions and they'll lead the missions if it's an important enough mission. Which is kind of badass, right? World War II, I don't feel like we see that much. Like, you don't see the generals like in the front of the infantry line, like, let's do it, guys, Omaha. Like, you didn't charge into Omaha first, no fucking way.
No, you're chilling on a boat miles away.
Absolutely. So he did go, and he couldn't be the pilot, so he had to be the co-pilot. Do you remember who his pilot was? Fucking small, crazy world of the Air Force right here. It's Paul Tippett, the guy who dropped the atomic bomb on the Enola Gay.
Yeah, no big deal.
No big deal.
Then you're talking about the atomic bomb in fucking Japan.
In Japan.
Yeah.
A couple years later, 3 years later. But
so this guy's got experience.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's
shit.
kind of crazy because, like, I didn't realize Tippett would have been, like, somebody who had actually seen combat and done really good. Mm-hmm. But he led, like, kind of the first American assault. Like, aerial assault. Like, and it was the big deal one. Like, you know, Armstrong was like a string of nerves next to him. Like, don't you fucking lose a plane. Like, and don't miss. Because if either of those happen, we're done for. And like, I'm going to just kill you myself. They get close. They get close to losing planes. Like, I think they crash land one. I think a wing catches on fire. Like, it's wild. Anyway, but they didn't lose a single bomber technically. After the mission, so the mission was a success, right? It was not like a resounding success as far as I'm concerned, but it was a success. They didn't lose a plane, which was big. We'll talk about why later. That wasn't going to matter that much in the long run. They had proven it. With the hero of the hour, Staff Sergeant Kent West, the ball turret gunner of the Birmingham Blitzkrieg. So ball turret gunners, which we'll definitely talk about the sad stories with ball turret gunners later, because their stories are fucked. Ball turret gunners. When your B-17 Flying Fortress is flying through the air, this ball descends from the ship, and there's a turret, and there's a guy in the ball like an embryo. And he is going to fire to keep everybody safe, and it's so fucking scary and cold.
It's a 50 cal, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the bigger ones. Him and the tail gunner, I think, have the big ones. The nose guns are definitely small. Yeah.
Fuck.
DB Fly Guy's going to correct me on that. I know it. So he was given credit for shooting down a German fighter. His claim was later changed to damage. Part of this, and this comes up a lot with like how many Germans did they shoot? Part of the issue is you could hit a German and you won't know if they died or not, like if they actually crashed. And when some of the German Luftwaffe planes like turn and nosedive, the way that the gas hits the air, something like that, smoke flies up. So a lot of them were thinking that they were hitting
looks like
them.
they're,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't totally their fault.
They also completely embellished.
Yeah,
the numbers.
absolutely. But also, like,
so many Germans.
I would be if I was sitting there like, ah, like I got him.
Yeah,
like,
fair point.
I would have to be like psyching myself up, like you got that dude. Like
fair point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But anyway, Eaker was so excited that he sent for that guy's twin guns and then mounted them in the headquarters, like on the wall. Like
Epic.
That's pretty cool.
It's dope.
The atmosphere was like post Super Bowl party in the city. Planes were doing Top Gun shit like flybys, but it's just called buzzing if you're not in Hollywood, I guess. But they would just like fly real low and then like buzz the tower.
Post Super Bowl parties, huh?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you been there?
Yeah, I've been to a post Super Bowl party. I'm not going to watch the Super Bowl, but like
It just shows up to the party.
Yeah, in college we're like, let me know when it's over.
I just want to drink.
I just want to drink.
Okay.
I'm realizing that's not how everybody did it.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
I think you'd be surprised.
All right. Unfortunately, it would never be the same. As Americans began to push beyond the limits of the Spitfires fighters are those are the escort planes, and on this mission they had them. So they were able to be like dogfighting against the Luftwaffe and whoever else was trying to give them a defense, and they would be able to like run screens for them and like protect them. And as they got out of range for them, they started taking giant casualties. Exactly a year later, 5 times as many bombers would be dead as had flown that first mission. Let us allow that to sit with us for a moment. One day you have proven a successful new method of attack and suffered no casualties. Can you feel their excitement? They have to be thinking, we might just end the war right here. That was what everybody was thinking, that the moral questions about bombing civilians and targets was out the window if you could end that war in 1 month, right? Who cares?
Where are we right now?
We're 1942.
But where on the planet?
We're in England.
England.
Yeah.
Okay. Got you.
Sadly,
sorry. Are they doing air missions over England in this, what you're referring to?
So they go from England. I think they go mainly to France.
Okay.
And Belgium. Yeah.
France. Yeah, France is hot.
Yeah, France is hot. I think it's France right now. That first mission I should know. It would have to be France.
So the first mission that they do, if from what I understand, is in Lille, France.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Lille.
Because it has to be close enough for the Spitfires to be able to follow them.
So Lille. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So sadly, this was not meant to be. They did not end the war in a week. Every day, week, and month after the undisputed success, bombers started going down and boys started dying. How long can you hold on to hope that you are going to end this war and make it back home against the rows of dead men, damaged planes, and missing planes? All of which are just devastating, which we'll get to all the psychological stuff later.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Brutal.
Oh yeah, it's fucked up.
But for now, oh, that was my little clip art. We got Armstrong, there's Armstrong, and there's Tibbets. Look at those guys.
They're just having a good time.
They're having a great time.
They're just taking a little cruise.
All right. So here are a couple pictures of the planes. So this is the B-17 Flying Fortress. This is the main one that's going to happen, especially the first half of the book. And here's going to be the B-24s that come a little bit later. I think they come later.
Well, they, again, like Kevin said, we be bouncing around a lot in the book. So that's why sometimes when you hear me being like, where are we right now?
Yes.
That's wise because he does not write chronologically.
No, so. I had to piece it all together. It took days.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Jesus
listener.
Christ. It was so hard. Multiple chapters. All right. So what are these missions? It's hopefully clear that they're bombing runs. So now for like the rest of today's episode, I'm just going to kind of talk about like what these mission types are.
Cool.
What the different, like there's 2 variations of mission types that they run pretty much the whole time. Like they don't deviate from these 2. And what were their goals? What was the mechanism that they thought they were going to be able to end the war in 1 month?
Let's see if I remember. Strategical.
Yeah, there you go. So they're bombing runs, but we can define it even further. Really, there are two mission categories, strategic bombing and tactical bombing.
Yeah.
Strategic bombing, as defined by the Air Force, strikes at the economy of the enemy. It attempts to cripple its war potential by blows at industrial production, civilian morale, and communications.
Civilian morale
is in the Air Force definition. That's what I'm saying, that this shit's baked in, and no judgment call on this because I'm not put in this situation. I don't know what I would do. But like, we shouldn't pretend like that wasn't part of the equation.
That's heavy for us looking at this in the year 2024. That's
hard.
That's worth noting.
It is, and it's worth not washing over that. Like, 100%. And I feel like people want to because they're like, America. I'm like, I love America too. I also want to know the truth though about like what happened.
So this was strategic bombing.
That's strategic bombing. So
strategic bombing is going for things like warehouses that are making planes or tanks
or the dormitories where the workers would go to the factories.
Okay, so and also like food dispensaries,
church.
Really?
Americans would bomb churches.
Oh fuck!
I think they bombed a church in that first mission.
I'll go into it.
Yeah. Tactical bombardment, on the other hand, is immediate air support of movement of air, land, or sea forces.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I asked my father-in-law, I was like, hey, can you tell me the difference between the two, like off memory? And he could, and he also told me like from his him remembering the Air Force Academy and being a pilot, is that tactical is usually one target. So like if you're on a tactical mission, you have one thing that you're going to do.
And is it typically reactionary?
That's kind of how he was like,
okay.
So it reminds me a lot of like Vietnam stuff, like whatever, Yajing, the valley.
Ia Drang.
Mm-hmm. And about, you get the call, they need support against this line of infantry that they're fighting against. So then you go out and you bomb that line.
Yeah.
And then you go back, and that's your tactical mission.
Mm-hmm.
Done. Success.
Got it.
That is not strategic bombing. Strategic bombing is mainly what these fools are doing.
Supply lines. Yeah.
Therefore, most of these missions are in the strategic bombing category. Yeah. And I don't want to harp too much on the civilian morale because it really feels like I'm just like saying it's all bad and it's not, we shouldn't have done it at all. And that's not really what I'm saying. But I am saying it's scary when you read through these founding father stories and like texts and these books that they were reading about how little they cared about the destruction of a town that was not a military target.
Yeah, I think that's super important for us to involve that aspect because as a kid, or even like, I don't know, 3 months ago, when I was looking at pictures of these and I was like, it's just, there's something warm and cozy about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, people are in Italy walking around drinking wine and then they go and bomb the stuff and it's so heroic. And it's like, no, dude, fucked up, malicious things happened.
And to me, the reason why I'm like so critical of it and wanting to make sure it stays at the forefront is that they believed it was worth it as long as you ended the war quickly. And so that to me is like, that is a valid criticism of this whole plan, is that they did not end the war as quickly as they thought. And, you know, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I think it is a criticism that's worth mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
To illustrate just how aware the leaders were of the indiscriminate bombing, Churchill said in a response to the question about bombing, we should never allow ourselves to apologize for what we did to Germany. So
never allow ourselves to apologize for what we did to Germany.
He's obviously referring to the fucking firebombing of Dresden.
Yeah.
And Hamburg, was that the other one was it a firebombing?
I don't know.
I actually don't even know if it was a firebombing in Dresden. Yeah, it was. Brutal.
Like, yeah, it's fucked up.
On, rivers of melted glass.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yep.
Yikes.
All right.
Fun stuff.
We'll get another quote here about the indiscriminate bombing stuff. Just to send it home. I'm not going to focus on this for most of the book. I just wanted to start with it. Most of the rest of the book is going to be us talking about like the men, like the missions and like the bravery and heroicism, because that's the part that we like. We like the soldiers on the ground, but I like to establish a good context before we go into that.
Yes.
So Eaker also said, I don't believe there was any moral consideration among military men. When I watched bombs falling and hitting houses and churches, I had distaste for the whole business, but they were shooting at us. Miller claims that Eaker also said he would have dropped the atomic bomb if they'd given him the order to.
Yeah, that's wild.
So that just shows you their mindset. Again, not right or wrong, but like let's not downplay that part, which I think a Hollywood version would.
Okay, so
careful.
The point, I think a good thing to harp on here that Kevin was bringing that up for is like, you know, the atomic bomb was dropped after all of this.
Yes.
Right. So we have to ask ourselves, if they had the capability of the atomic bomb, would they have dropped it on Germany? And that's the answer.
Absolutely.
The answer is yes.
He's like, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
And we'll learn a lot. They don't care too much about the Germans. A couple of them do. That one brother does. But a lot of them are just like, I just want to keep my dudes alive in my flying fortress. And that's all I actually care about. And so the faster I get these bombs out, the faster I get to go home.
Yeah.
And I don't blame that guy because he's doing his job and he's being a patriot as much as he knows how to be one. Okay, so we can't transition from theory to practice, which is essentially what this episode is, right? How we got from the theory of the Air Force to the Air Force without talking about our good friend.
Ooh, is that it?
That's it. That's the Norden bomb site. That's what it looks like in the plane.
Big deal, folks.
Big deal. The Norden bomb site was America's most important secret weapon before the Manhattan Project, which I did not know about before this. Here's some quotes from Miller. It was first developed in 1931 for sea-based naval aircraft by a reclusive Dutch engineer, Carl Norden. His wife teased him, calling him a merchant of death, but Norden claimed he was trying to save lives by making bombs more precise, which I agree with. It is hard to realize until you read through it. Bombs are inaccurate. Inaccurate as fuck.
Guess what, guys? The Norden bomb site does not make clouds disappear.
Yes. So this, in combination with the B-17, gave the Bomber Mafia, which I get, again, that was like the four guys that we talked about at the beginning. They gave them what they needed. The Bomber Mafia did not focus on long-range fighters to escort the bombers because they didn't understand how radar would develop and be utilized. The author says that the Mafia suffered from a lack of imagination. The other issue was the B-17s were just too damn fast for the range they needed. That's an interesting point that I didn't realize, because like when you play video games or board games, you don't realize that the bomber is like usually and right now in World War II, this bomber is the fastest plane out there by like a big margin. The Spitfires can't keep up with it.
Oh, interesting.
Because it has the biggest engines on it.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot faster than it, because in video games when they try to like scale everything, right, it's like the bombers are slower because they're going to be devastating, so you got to stop them.
Yeah.
No, they're really fast, giant things that are scary.
Interesting.
It's not level. It's not like,
Some just like juggernaut being like,
Yeah.
It's like, no, this thing's booking.
Yes.
Okay.
The author says that suffer from lack of imagination. And finally, in the most government-funded way that teachers and servicemen all over this great nation understand, this is the real reason, folks, why they went at it this way. They were worried that it would cost too much and get canceled altogether. One day, I will get the pencils and paper I need in the same year. What we're talking about here is they didn't have a perfect plan, right? Like the Norden bomb site is not, like this is what they said is going to fix all the problems. It didn't fix all the problems. And they said the B-17s are going to not need escorts. They definitely needed escorts. And they said they're going to have time to train all their men. They didn't have time to train all their men. And so the question that you keep asking yourself is why? And the reason is they were constantly afraid of getting all their funding pulled. And they were constantly afraid of Churchill absorbing their Air Force.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a scene in that Churchill movie, Finest Hour, where Churchill is begging Roosevelt for planes, and he calls up Roosevelt and he's like, "Can I get those planes?" Like, and this is before America had fully gotten involved. Yep. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that." And Churchill's like, "We bought them. Like, we bought your planes, dude. I just need you guys to bring them to me." So, but it just shows like the paranoia that America had of England like taking on. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was probably Arnold or Mitchell that were saying, "No, you can't do it, Roosevelt."
Yeah,
it was probably Arnold. It was probably Arnold like saying like, "No, those are my planes."
100%. The president's gonna listen to the generals and be like, "What should I do?" And they're gonna be like, "Do not do that."
I was reading a little bit about when Roosevelt confirmed Arnold, because it's not in the book, and I guess it was like somebody was in disagreement, and then somebody else that was high up is like, "I will fucking quit if you don't confirm him, and then you confirm him the next day.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
Like there was shit going on in the late 30s. It turns out when everybody knew the war was coming.
Yeah. Fuck. Well, that's dope that you got a picture of this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I've been reading that word a lot, and I didn't know what it looked like. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, which makes sense now, right? Because in the book they talk about the guy standing over the bomb site, over the glass, and then they press the button and it releases all the bombs.
Yep. All
Super
right.
Super accurate.
Super accurate. You can put a bomb in a pickle barrel.
Yep.
With that thing, right?
That's what he said.
So is that the first 2 chapters?
There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. This episode was the episode of context. Introduction and context.
I hope you like context.
Well, it's important for history. Yep. So, yeah, we got these guys who are going to try to go over to England and stop the spread of Nazi-occupied Europe.
Fuck Nazis.
Fuck Nazis. Like, no shame in saying that.
Absolutely. I had to talk to my kids today about Holocaust deniers. Yeah. This is lame. It's lame that I have to do this.
That's dumb.
But let's do it.
Yeah, that's dumb.
We're anti-Nazis here.
Don't like Nazis.
Mm-mm.
And if you don't like Nazis, you should rate our show.
That'd be great.
If you don't rate our show, you probably are pro-Nazi.
Whoa. No.
No?
I'm saying
too much.
Too far.
Too far. Okay. It was a joke.
It was a joke. Chill out, guys. It was a joke.
I guess people don't like Nazi jokes anymore. But yeah, please rate our show. That would be lovely. Please share our show with people you think would find it interesting. And join our Patreon. We got some exclusive content on there.
We have a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah.
Also, thank you everyone who's gone on our Patreon. You want to read off their names for us?
Taylor Witt, thank you. Joe. Is Joe's last name Dijon?
Yeah.
Joe. Thank you, Joe. We appreciate the shit out of you. Taylor Witt, you're fucking awesome. Marcy Leggett, you're awesome. And Katie Allery. Those are all of our Patreon subscribers, and we appreciate the shit out of you.
Absolutely.
Like, genuinely means the world to us. And that means that you believe in us, and that's like fucking awesome.
It's huge.
Yeah.
We're calling each other every time that people joined us, and we're freaking out.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome, dude.
It's crazy.
It's like a huge deal for the next year for us, what these types of things. So we appreciate you. I got some of my literature on there, talking about people in the Afghan National Army getting high and trying to rush the gates. Fun stuff.
Crazy.
Kevin's got some literature on there. I have some extra episodes that I put on there. Really fun stuff, and we're going to be putting more on there. So go on to patreon.com/BattleBuddiesPodcast. Join the brigade. Join the brigade. And we're going to be covering Masters of Air. We have some really fucking cool guests that are going to be coming on the show within the next couple of months. Like, cool shit's fucking happening. Look out for merch, and look out for our Discord popping up.
Yep.
Yeah. Other than that, dude, we'll see you for fucking episode 2.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening, and until next time, bonsai.